The Kia EV6 is a sporty little hatchback that actually is a ton of fun to drive, is packed with great features, and it just so happens to be electric and should probably be on your consideration list if you're looking to buy a new vehicle. So big thanks to Ron Lewis Kia for letting us take the EV6 for a week so that we can make this video. Today's video is sponsored by SmoothSat and their SA3 scooter. I've been riding it around for the last few weeks and I didn't realize electric scooters were so much fun. And particularly the SA3 has a couple great features that make it even more enjoyable. It's got a rechargeable 12 amp hour battery that allows you to get up to 20 miles on a single charge. And it has a 350 watt brushless hub motor that allows you to get top speeds of up to 15.6 miles per hour. And it can handle my heavy frame of roughly 200 pounds because it goes up to 220 pounds, and it can carry an above average weighted adult up a hill at 14 degrees. So you can go long, you can go fast, and you can go high. And the SA3's automotive grade battery pack has a lifespan of at least 800 charging cycles. And then it's got great usability features like its ability to fold down so that it's easy to transport, as well as this locking mechanism that makes sure it's not going to open up during transport. It has its own speedometer so you can know just how fast you're going, as well as an odometer to know how many miles you've traveled. Additionally, it has a kickstand that allows you to make sure it gets set up. It has a bell, which lets people know that you're coming past them, and a great front brake that allows you to stop smoothly. It also has a brake light and a headlight so that you can make sure you're seeing exactly where you're going, even if it's not in the best visibility conditions. It's been a ton of fun to ride the SA3 around, and in case you want to pick up your own, you can check our link in the video description, which will give you up to $100 off the total for a SmoothSat SA3. You can use the 14% discount code UFDTESA3 and get a $30 off coupon code at the link in the video description. Again, that's getting $100 off a great scooter that's powerful, long range, and has great usability features to make it an enjoyable experience, whether you're a large adult like I am, or even for your teens. Have safe time riding, friends. Check out SmoothSat at the link in the video description. So the Kia EV6 shares a lot of similarities to the Ioniq 5, which is its cousin car, but this is the more aggressive design. From the aggressive front grills to the angular shapes that are here on the hatchback, as well as the tail lights, everything about this EV6 screams more performance orientation as opposed to the Ioniq 5's more classical crossover SUV styling. And honestly, it's hard to tell that this is an electric vehicle besides the fact that Kia decided to name their EVs EVs. For the most part, I think this is a great car in general, and then it just also happens to be electric. Kia didn't really go out of their way to make it a futuristic setup, but rather kept to their strengths, and the only thing that they seem to have copied from Tesla are the door handles, which open the exact opposite of a Tesla. You have to push forward for it to flap out, for aerodynamic reasons, of course. Now, the trim package that we have here is the Wind all-wheel drive version. It's not their top-of-the-line GT line, which will have bigger rims and have a little bit more of the accoutrements inside, but it is actually still a decent vehicle, coming in at the price point of roughly $53,000. But while the exterior of the EV6 is quite sporty, the interior has less of a performance orientation. Now, this is a fun car to drive and it is quite quick, but for the most part, it looks like a traditional Kia vehicle. From the steering wheel to the buttons on the steering wheel to the buttons everywhere else in the car, it's a very familiar experience in case you've driven a Kia or a Hyundai. And it even has a power button, just like a regular car. It's not like a Tesla where you can just get in, put the car in drive, and go. You still have to turn the vehicle on and off. And there's even an option to have a startup sound when you turn the vehicle on. The car makes a noise when it turns on, but it doesn't make a noise otherwise. And so I've had the issue several times where I've gotten out of the car, closed the door, and forgot that the vehicle's on, at which point it will angrily yell at me that I left the car on. This has happened several times over the course of the week, and I can expect that it would happen even more because I'm not used to turning off a car that I can't hear. But some of the atypical things that you'll find because it's an electric vehicle are things like this floating center console, which gives you this extra storage space underneath thanks to the fact that there's no transmission tunnel. You typically only find this on bigger vehicles like a minivan, which are elevated above the transmission tunnel. Now, the wind trim level of the EV6 is Kia's midline off-rate. It's not the highest end GT line, which gives you all of the features that come extra as standard, but this wind level does have a couple premium options, such as the ability to save seat profiles, as well as heated and ventilated seats, and a heated steering wheel. Now, there is an extra upgrade package where you can get things such as blind spot cameras. When you turn on your indicator, it'll show you if there's any car to the side, but at the base level wind, you don't get that added in. Additionally, the car comes fitted with Meridian sound speakers all throughout the car, which sound good. It's not too bassy. It has the right amount of tone pretty much throughout the vehicle, and it sounds good even in spite of extra road noise from the lack of the engine up front, which, let's talk about that for a second. Now, Kia, as I've mentioned, kind of designed a car that doesn't feel like an electric vehicle from the outside or in, and that applies to under the hood as well. When you open up the hood, what you find is a traditional engine-looking compartment, but with an EV badge right here. Now, on modern Teslas, as well as modern Ford electric vehicles, you'll find that this is a storage compartment, and that's no different here because you can just open up the EV hood, and then you'll find that there is a small storage area here for tools, bird feathers, or even access to the 12-volt battery under here. But a very traditional looking vehicle with some additional sound dampening up front in order to help ease the road noise. But one of my favorite things about this is the fact that it is a hatchback, not a typical sedan. Especially as the father of a disabled child, we have a lot of stuff that we have to carry with us when it comes to our son's special needs. And this does allow us to get all of his stuff fit in, even his adaptive stroller that has to come in the back. Now, under the trunk, you do have a little bit of extra space for things like the tire mobility kit, as well as the vehicle to load adapter that Kia includes in this vehicle. And then once you get underneath, what you'll find is the subwoofer down here, again, with more noise dampening to help with that road noise. Additionally, this entire thing slides out to give you kind of a sub-trunk, which can give you just a little bit more depth in here in case that's what you want. And then if you want to actually fold down the seats, it's as easy as pulling these levers, and the 60/40 folding back seats come down and give you tons of space going throughout the car. So the 60 folding back seats are actually quite spacious, and they also do recline just a little bit, which you can adjust with this paddle right here. Now, I'm a 6 foot tall male adult, and I have decent amount of headroom in the back seat here, as well as a decent amount of legroom. And again, thanks to the lack of transmission tunnel, you get plenty of leg space for all 3 passengers to fit back here. All 3 of my kids can fit back here, even with our youngest son still in a car seat. I do think if you have 3 kids who have to fit in a car seat, it might be a little tight, but 2 kids can fit back here with car seats, no problem. And again, as an adult, I wouldn't feel too uncomfortable back here. As far as the cup holder situation, you have one here on the front door, one on the passenger door, 2 here in the center console. You're not supposed to store beverages down here in the under center console, but it's possible. But my main gripe with this car is actually the rear cup holders, which come in the middle seat that you can fold down right here. Now, this doubles as like a storage compartment where it has like an under access point, but the holes for the cup holders not big enough for an LTTstore.com water bottle, which is a typical size water bottle. You have to have smaller cups in order to fit back there. But the interior actually looks pretty premium. It has this nice feeling, almost plastic dashboard. It's not quite any material that I've seen before. The seats are made out of vegan leather. The back of the seats have this nice little hook for hanging things like a kid's iPad back there. They kind of have a decent shape to them. Overall, it's a very comfortable interior, as well as the ride being comfortable. Driving the EV6 is fun. It's smooth. It has all of the great features that you get from an electric vehicle, such as the on-demand torque, as well as the lack of engine noise. But one of the things that Kia does include is the ability to turn on engine noise if that's something that you actually want to remember as you're driving your electric vehicle around town. Additionally, like a regular electric vehicle, it has regeneration that happens when you take your foot off the accelerator, but you're in control over how much of that regeneration takes place using the paddles that are here on the steering wheel. You can decrease it so that there's actually no regeneration, or you can set it to max, which Kia calls iPedal, which will allow you to come to a full stop, recharging the battery along the way. Personally, after getting used to electric vehicles, I like to keep it on max, and that's one of the gripes that I do have with the EV6 is that you actually don't get the iPedal on startup, no matter what your previous setting was. I haven't seen a way to change this in the settings, but every time I boot up the car, I have to set it to max regeneration. Otherwise, it's only on level 3, which does not bring you to a full stop. You still have to use the brake pedal. It's a minor complaint coming from somebody who's used to driving electric vehicles, but if you're coming from a gas-powered car, it actually helps with that familiarity that Kia's brought into the vehicle. Additionally, Kia gives you multiple drive modes. There's Eco, there's Standard, and there's Sport. But just like the iPedal driving, Kia does not allow you to boot the car into that Sport mode. You have to manually change it every single time you turn on the car using the drive mode button that's here on the steering wheel. But the changes between the drive modes is super noticeable. If you keep your foot on the same percentage on the accelerator, as you change the drive modes, the car actually will accelerate going from Eco to normal to Sport because you're getting more power out of the car. Additionally, as you change drive modes, it changes the display that you're looking at to have different looks to it depending on, again, whether or not you're in Eco, Normal, or Sport. Eco has this more cool blue tone to it, focusing more on your efficiency per mile, whereas Sport shows you 0 to 100 on the torque. You can customize this in the menu, so if you want to see what your efficiency is while you're in Sport mode, you can still do that. Personally, I would really like it if Kia will allow me to boot the EV6 into Sport mode with iPedal turned on, because that's how I like to drive this car most of the time, but I just have to hit a few buttons in order to get it there every single time I turn on the car. In all of the drive modes, you get the torque response that's become known with electric vehicles, but there is a little bit of a lag when it comes to Eco mode, a little bit of less lag when it comes to normal mode, and hardly any noticeable lag when it comes to Sport mode. Now, I will just compare this to my Tesla driving experience, and Sport mode actually does take a little bit longer to respond than I've experienced in a Model 3 and a Model X, but anybody who's coming from a traditional gas-powered vehicle, it's gonna feel like a brand new experience. However, that's not to say that any of the modes feel slow. Eco mode actually does still give you a bit of pep when you hit the accelerator. It just feels like it's a heavier vehicle. It takes a little bit longer to respond. It doesn't go quite as quick, but it still gives you that instant response torque. Probably better for highway driving. Sport's more for zipping in and out of traffic and making sure that you're first in line. Whenever you're at a red light waiting for it to turn green, you can literally beat anybody off the line so long as it's not a Tesla. And handling on the EV6 feels like a typical crossover. It actually doesn't have the stickiness that I've come to expect driving a Tesla. It doesn't feel so much like a performance car, but rather a family vehicle that happens to have a lot of torque thanks to the electric motors. And that's no more obvious than when you're taking it around a tight turn and give it a little bit too much of the accelerator pedal. There's a lot more squealing and sideways movement on the EV6 than I've noticed on my Model 3 or even the Model X, which happens to weigh about 1,000 pounds more than this car. And then when it comes to efficiency, the Kia EV6 does pretty darn well when it comes to actually getting the most out of the battery pack. This all-wheel drive version has a 77 kilowatt-hour battery, and the EPA estimated range is roughly 274 miles. With my aggressive driving during the week of my test driving in Sport mode, I averaged around 3.5 miles per kilowatt-hour, which based on the size of the battery pack should get me around 270 miles. If I cared about efficiency at all, I would probably get closer to 300 miles, which is pretty good for an EPA estimated range. Now, most of my testing was done in around town driving and not on the highway, so your mileage may vary, but the EV6 at its price point does deliver a decent bit of range. And the range is good. Like 280 miles doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're just commuting around town, you're gonna get more than enough. If you're trying to go across the country, you can still do it. You just have to plan whether it's with Electrify America or other DC fast chargers in order to make sure that you're actually going to be able to make it to your destination. It's not quite as intuitive as Tesla's supercharging network, especially using the navigation that's built into the EV6, but it is still doable with any sort of planning. It's just not as get up and go as a gas-powered vehicle is, but at 270 miles of range, you're still driving at 60 miles an hour for nearly 4 to 5 hours. Like that's a long time to go in between stops, especially if you have kids, especially if you like to get out and stretch your legs. I think electric vehicles help to make road trips a bit more sustainable because you are getting out of the car more often. And one of the things that the EV6 has standard, which helps with efficiency, is the fact that it has a heat pump for heating up in the winter, which will save you a little bit on your range because they're the most efficient way of heating a vehicle. Now, when it comes to charging the car, it's actually really not a problem. It has the CCS adapter back here, which will allow you to access DC fast charging. But when it comes to just charging it at home, it's not a problem. However, I personally experienced some of the frustrations of owning an electric vehicle while test driving this EV6 because our local DC fast charger actually didn't work, and the AC fast charger that's available at Whole Foods was always full. So we actually had no way of charging this besides at our home, which is a little inconvenient if you live in an apartment. If you don't have a robust charging infrastructure near you, it actually might make it difficult to actually consider having an electric vehicle. But in case you're looking for more robust power options, Kia does include this vehicle to load adapter, which is one of my favorite features. It attaches to the charging port that's back here on the EV6. You plug it in, then you have access to a 120 volt 15 amp plug, which can be great if you're out camping or you want to just have a night on the town but still power some things with it. Specifically for me, with some of the power outages that we've had here since moving to Pennsylvania, this would be great as a backup for our son whenever we need to make his food or actually need to plug in his medical equipment. We can be sure that this gigantic battery that we have can actually be used that way, as opposed to Tesla, which does not give you access to any of that. Or if you just want to set up a game night and have a projector set up on a garage door, you can go ahead and plug that right on in and play video games right outside. But overall, the EV6 is fun to drive. I've enjoyed taking it out. My wife has taken it out on trips with our children, and she loves driving it as well. So I think anybody who's coming from this car, having not experienced the highest tier of electric vehicles, you're actually gonna really love it. As far as the driver assistance that's featured here, I actually think it's really usable, especially compared, again, to my Tucson. I find the one on the EV6 to be a little bit more robust, especially on the highway, because the EV6 has a special highway driver assist, which will allow it to take turns on the highway for you. It doesn't work too well around town for taking small turns in the road at low speeds, so it's not quite up to the level that I've experienced with Tesla's autopilot, but as far as adaptive cruise control goes, it's very capable. It can maintain speed, keep distance from the car in front of you, and it tries to keep you centered in your lane. As far as the infotainment goes, there's a lot at your hands here, but it is all touchscreen, which many people coming over to electric cars tend to not prefer. The only knobs that you have here are the shifter as well as the air conditioning knob, which sometimes doubles as a media control knob, but I haven't been able to figure out when it is and when it isn't, and it just randomly chooses when it's gonna be that or the other. But you do have buttons at your disposal on the steering wheel. There is the adaptive cruise control that you can turn on, as well as media controls, voice commands. Additionally, they haven't gone full Tesla, so there still are the physical indicator switches as well as windshield wiper controls. But as far as navigating the menu, it takes a little bit of familiarity. It's not intuitive, even for somebody who's tech savvy like I am. I had to get familiar with where the things were in the EV6, such as swiping over from this screen to get to the EV menu, which then gives me my charging options and not control of the car. If I want control of the car, I have to go to setup and then I have to hit vehicle. It's not super intuitive, but you'll figure it out eventually. It's a little unuser friendly, but still there. But featured in the infotainment, you have access to changing all of the features that you expect to come with a modern car, whether it's the radar sensors that let you know if you're too close to an object up front or out back, to controlling all of your media options, or even changing the sound of the car. My favorite car sound is dynamic. It sounds more like a traditional engine, which is nice. Now, EV6 does come with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but this specific model does not feature the wireless versions of those. And I've read online that only newer EV6s are going to have the wireless module, and that there are tweaks and workarounds you can do if your EV6 doesn't come with it, but I feel like that's a little ridiculous and it should have come standard on all of them. But on that note, you have to plug in order to get CarPlay or Android Auto, but there are no convenience convenient plug points near where you naturally rest your phone. There is the Qi charger that's right here by the armrest, but that's not a good place to actually plug it because the plug goes downwards, or you have to have a cable draping over to get to the plugs that are down here at the center console. It's not particularly well considered where the USB ports are, considering the fact that you have to physically wire up in order to get Apple CarPlay. One of the things that I really love about the EV6 is the charging ports that they actually have specifically for the back seats. They're actually on the back of the front seats as opposed to being attached to the center console, which makes it a little better for having small children who might want to actually kick the cable out, and this will allow you to have it a little bit higher up and not encounter small feet. It's a problem that I have in the Tesla. Yeah, like the kids sit in their car seat, especially Emmett, since he kicks his feet, like he can actually kick the cable out, or like he's broken cables before just because his feet move. Like small children aren't aware of their bodies, so they just hit things. Having it on the seat makes it so that they actually are out of the way, which is nice. Additionally, as far as power, what you'll find back here is there's actually a 120 volt outlet down here, which has a sliding mechanism and a lock in case you want to keep that closed, but will allow you to actually have more robust entertainment options for the back here in case you want to have a game console for longer trips, something like that. You can power it from the interior of the car. Now up front, you also have access to a whole bunch of other charging options as well. There's the USB data slot for Android Auto and CarPlay. There's a USB-C charger on the front area here, as well as on this under center console, there's another USB-C, as well as an access to a 12 volt 180 watt outlet. And lastly, you'll find another 180 volt outlet back here in the trunk space. Additionally, as a father with a special needs kid, I do have a couple of accessibility things that I want to bring up with the Kia EV6. Number one, I would love to have a way to keep the climate control on in the car from the infotainment screen. Because our son can't sweat, being in summer is actually really difficult. And one of the main appeals of an electric vehicle is the fact that you can have climate control on without having the vehicle on. So we rely on electric vehicles in order to keep the car cool while we're out and about, making sure that our son does not get exposed to heat stroke or anything else. With the Kia, in order to actually keep the air conditioning on, you have to use the app, which I don't have access to because this is a review unit. But even if I did, sometimes if we go to the park, we know our son's gonna get hot and we just wanna keep the car on for the AC. But I'm unable to do that from within the infotainment section. I'd have to do it from the app, which is a little bit more difficult and less user-friendly. Additionally, one of the complaints I have with the EV6 is the fact that you can't just walk up to the car and open the door. It's still locked. You have to physically get the key out and unlock it. Even though the car recognizes that I'm here and unfolded the mirror, I still have to get the key out of my pocket to open the car. And as somebody who has to take his disabled son and put him in the car, the added step of getting a key out makes it really difficult. This is a standard feature that I have on my Tucson. I'm not sure why Kia didn't include it here on the EV6. Potentially they could do a software update as well, which is one of the main benefits of having an electric car. This is more software than it is hardware. Considering the place that the EV6 has in the market, currently this wind version of the EV6 with all-wheel drive comes in at roughly the price point of $53,000. If you compare that to the Model 3, which starts at $48,000, it's actually a little bit more expensive, but that Model 3 is not all-wheel drive, and the EV6 has slightly more range at 274 miles. If you get up to the Model 3 all-wheel drive, well, that's more expensive at roughly $57,000. But the main advantage that the EV6 has is that it's a hatchback and you can actually fit more in the storage compartment, having 24.4 cubic feet of cargo space compared to the Model 3's 19.8. Now, it's not as much as a crossover like in the Model Y, which has 30.2, which is roughly the same as the Mustang Mach-E, but this is a good splitting of the difference between the Model 3 and the Model Y and Mach-E, where you get more storage space, but it's still built more like a regular sedan. Additionally, Kia vehicles still qualify for the federal tax credit that's here in the United States, which should cut $7,500 off the price of the vehicle if your tax burden happens to be that high, which drops the price of this version down to roughly $46,000, making it a little bit less pricey than the Model 3, which doesn't qualify for the tax credit any longer. But in case you don't need all-wheel drive or you don't need 274 miles of range, the EV6 does come in lower base level trims with rear-wheel drive, less range, closer to the 200-mile mark, and starting in the low $40,000 region, but they can go up to as high as roughly $60,000 with the GT line package. Overall, I really like the EV6. It's not as sporty as a Model 3, it's more practical as a regular car. The build quality definitely is better than Tesla and rivals that of a Mach-E while coming in slightly cheaper, as well as the fact that it has a regular car vibe to it. It's a EV car for non-EV enthusiasts. If you're somebody who's been looking to get into the electric vehicle game but don't want to be overwhelmed with tech options and software issues, the EV6 does seem to make a compelling argument for itself, especially at the price point that it's coming into, kind of undercutting where Tesla has their Model 3 and Model Y, and even some of the Mach-E price points as well. And again, a big thanks to Ron Lewis Kia for letting us take the EV6 for a week. We're gonna have a video coming up on the Ford F-150 Lightning, which Ron Lewis is also providing for us. And so get subscribed in case you want to see more electric vehicle videos here from UFD Tech.